Are you frustrated with delegation because you delegate something and then you end up having to come back and fix it anyway? If so, it's not your team's fault. It's actually yours, and that is good news. You might be thinking, why is that good news? Because you probably were never taught how to delegate well, but this is a very learnable skill. And if you'll stick with me by the end of this video, you are going to know how to and how not to delegate. Welcome back to Amy Exits, where we talk all things buying and selling businesses. And one of the things that you have got to learn how to do a good job with if you want your business to be sellable, or if you've just recently bought a business, is getting the team on board to drive growth. You cannot alone be the sole person responsible for taking this company to new levels. It's incredibly frustrating to feel like you're constantly dragging everyone along, and it's incredibly overwhelming when it feels like every task lands up on your plate. In order for us to get out of that cycle and break through the insanity, we've got to get really good at understanding delegation. So first, I want to talk about how do we do it wrong? What are the most common mistakes that we make? Then we'll talk about how to do it right. But first, let's just commiserate for a minute. Like if you're feeling the frustration of delegation, go ahead and just let us know below in the comments, because I've been there where it's like, I asked you to do it because I wanted you to do it, not because I wanted you to bring it back to me for me to then have to do it. So I'm with you. If you want to commiserate just a little bit, put some comments below. These are not just workplace skills. You might have some similar challenges going on at home, like if you ask for somebody else to do the dishes and then they do it and they do it totally wrong and you end up having to then redo it. These tips are going to help you wherever you're delegating. So let me know in the comments below, what's something that's currently frustrating you with regards to delegation? Okay, so let's talk about bad delegation. The first one is going to be abdication. Abdication is when you're like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm going to just let it go. I'm turning it over to you. And then you don't follow up with making sure that it's actually going well, or you don't work with them to make sure that it's going well. That is never going to end well. And in fact, I will tell you that my most expensive mistakes I've ever made in business were all because I was abdicating. Sometimes because I felt overwhelmed in my personal life. Sometimes it was because I had a little bit of felt like I'd been a little bit emotionally shot down, and I was like, fine, then you can do it on your own. But I'm telling you, every time I abdicate, it ends up being a very expensive mistake. When you delegate, you are still involved. You still have ownership, and you still have, at the end of the day, it's your company. So we don't just get to push things off and expect that we're going to get all the reward without ever hearing from them again. Now let's go in number 2 to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, from you doing nothing to you micromanaging. In micromanagement, you're trying to hold on to everything. You want total control. And so you're telling people what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And if they don't do it your way, then they have to go back and do it again exactly the way that you want it to be done. Micromanagement kills creativity. It kills drive. People do not like to work in that type of an environment. So you take like your best, most creative, innovative thinkers, and you tell them to stop thinking, to stop creating, to stop innovating, and to just do it exactly your way. This is going to stunt growth, and it's going to make it so that you always have to have your hand in all of the places. There's a big difference between training someone to do it and micromanaging. I tell people when I'm training them, like, hey guys, this is the best way we have figured out to do it thus far. If you find a better, more efficient way to do it, we are so excited to learn that from you. And so I'm training them. They have the foundation. I haven't just passed off a task and hoped for the best and abdicated, but I'm also open to the fact that it could be done better. And maybe they'll come back and they'll find a new way that works better for them. It's more efficient, more streamlined. And in the end, maybe it only works better for them, but if they're getting a better result doing it their way, why wouldn't I want that? All right, I feel like we're moving into like the deadly sins of delegation. Maybe that's what we should have called this from the beginning. Third deadly sin is unconscious competence. This is when you're holding on to a piece of the puzzle in your brain and you don't even know that you're holding on to it. When I explain something to someone else that I know how to do really well, I tend to only give them about 75% of the puzzle. And then there's these things that I just know to do and I haven't actually communicated it to them. So one of the things that I do that helps a lot in this area is I'll give something to them and then I'll ask myself the question, what else have I not explained? What am I still holding in my head? What are the pieces of the process that I'm assuming they know that they may or may not actually know? And then that helps me to actually get out a more full process with all of the steps. So we're not coming back and they're like, well, I did it. And I'm like, oh, you forgot to do this. And they're thinking, you never told me about that. This can be really frustrating for your team members because they constantly feel like you didn't give enough information up front for them to be successful. I may have personally heard this criticism about myself from several people, and it's something that I constantly have to work on. So if you do this, it's not malicious, it's just you need to slow down and you need to get the full process out. One little tip that you can do in this is actually record yourself doing the thing that you're about to delegate and narrate it out loud, because you might think something is just so apparent, but as you do it and you have to actually say, and then I click this button, all of a sudden that is it's documented and it's ready to be delegated. Fourth big no-no when it comes to delegation is under-delegating. So this is where you have team members sitting around and they're like, hey, I'm here, I'm willing to help. And you're like, I'm too busy, I just need to do it myself. This is really frustrating for you because you're paying for help and still overwhelmed. It's really frustrating for your people because they're watching you be overwhelmed and they're willing to step in and take on the load, but you're just not giving it to them. And so this one, I feel like you have the worst of both worlds. Like you're paying for help, but you're also still completely overwhelmed and not getting any support. It is maybe going to take you longer to delegate right now, but think about the hours and the weeks and the months of time that it's going to save you over the years that you will own this business by not having to do these tasks. Slow down, do the hard thing, delegate it now, build out the process, and then you can delegate that out and it doesn't ever have to come back to you. And also, I mean, you may have spent a lot of time and energy finding like these really great team members, but if they don't feel challenged and they don't feel appreciated and trusted, they're going to end up going somewhere else. And then you have to start over again from scratch, still not having the right processes and make the same mistakes again. Just slow down, do it right. It's worth it. Next, delegating the crap tasks. You know what I'm talking about. Every business has them. It's like all the things that are the worst things to do, and you give them all to one person. And so their literal job is all crap tasks. That's not fun. Nobody wants that job. So when we look at the undesirable tasks that do need to be done, let's like disperse those amongst a few people so nobody is taking all the hits all the time. Everybody needs to have parts of their job that are enjoyable. The interesting thing about this is that some jobs that one person hates, another person does not mind. For example, I actually like folding laundry. Now, is it my favorite thing to do in the world? No, but out of all the chores, I like folding laundry because I can listen to an audiobook or I can watch a movie while I do it, and nobody bothers me because if they come in, I always ask them to help. So it's like my alone time. I don't mind doing that task. My husband hates that task. He does not mind mowing the lawn. I come in from mowing the lawn and my whole face is swollen and I have hives. I hate mowing the lawn. So when you figure out what are the crap tasks, and then you figure out who actually doesn't mind doing them, you can distribute those so nobody has a totally terrible job. Next mistake that we make is, and I think this one is really a big one, is it's tasks, not roles. So when you give people a bunch of tasks to do, they will literally check off and say, oh yeah, I did everything. But when you give them roles, the role is to create a result. Here's a really good example. I had an orthodontist one time who told me that he was really struggling because he would tell his people, like, hey, I need you to do all the follow-up calls. And then they would come back and they were like, yeah, done. He's like, oh, so how many people came back in and signed for their braces? Oh, nobody, but I called them all. I left voicemails. Okay, that's the difference between tasks versus roles, because they were given the task to call the follow-ups, they did it. They were not given the role to hit the sales goal, right? Their role was to get new people started. And so when we do that, we are going to constantly have people waiting for us to tell them what to do. and coming and asking us what to do. I don't want to tell my people what to do beyond the training time. I want them to understand their role, and I want them to go out there and create and be innovative and then report back to me on how it's going. And then I have something to mentor them on to get them to the next level. But I'm not looking for a Roomba employee that just goes out, does their job, and then goes back to their charging station. Like, figure out what to do. Now, let's be honest. Sometimes as business owners, we get so involved in what we're doing that we don't actually take time to think, should I really be doing this? Is this even important? Or is this like a high time consuming, low value returning activity? As you start to delegate these out, you actually have to look at the value of each one of these things. And I would love to hear from you below. What is a task right now that you think is super important that as you actually reflect on it, maybe should just be taken off and nobody should be doing it? All right, we're down to our last two deadly sins of delegation. The next one is undervaluing your employees. Your employees are building your dream. They show up every day to build your dream. They are going to get paid for the time that they work in this business. And I know that you take on more risk than they do, but at the end of it all, you're the one who walks away with whatever is the value of the sale. And I get so frustrated when I hear employers taking their people for granted because they're working hard for you. And if you are not being successful with delegation and then you're just blaming your team members, I want you to like turn that finger back around. This is your responsibility. You're the leader. You are the one that can learn to do this well. And it's so important that we set up this context because your people are the ones that are going to drive growth. Last one, thinking that your way is the only way. And I get why this one is challenging because a lot of times we are the one who has had the most experience. And in my marketing agency, one of the things that we do when we bring on a new client is we ask them for everything that they've done that didn't work. And they're thinking we're asking that so we don't do any of those things. We're asking that so we can understand why it didn't work and we can then go back to it and try it again. Sometimes you look back in your history and you're like, oh, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. With a new person at the helm of it, with new ideas and new creativity, sometimes that thing that you failed at 2 years ago could be the exact great thing that is going to help you be successful now. So I don't want you to think that your way is the only right way. There are many right ways to get there. And again, this ties into tasks, not roles. If you'll give your people roles, you will hang in there with them after you give a task. Then you're going to be having accountability meetings. You're going to be there to mentor and to train. You're going to be there to answer questions. You're giving them all the details that you have in your head. You're actually giving them challenging things to do. As you do all of these things, you're going to start to build a high accountability culture. And that is where we want to get to. So here's how I define a high accountability culture. This is one where everybody is bought into the vision of where we're going. We give people roles. We let them know what they're responsible for. We teach them the process best process that we figured out of how to do it. We give it to them. They go out, they do the work, they create, they innovate, they make mistakes and mess up. They learn from it. They come back to us. We talk about how it's going and we talk about what it's going to take for it to go better. And then we do it again. And so there's this constant send out, come back, send out, come back. And when you have a high accountability culture, your people that are on your team love to win. Because the ones who don't like that, they will want to leave. And you'll find them pretty quickly, the ones that resist that accountability and they don't want to come back and tell you what they're doing. They don't want to show you the results. They don't like being accountable for results. They just want you to be like, well, I did what you told me to do. They stick out like a sore thumb. You'll be able to find them and then you can either let them go or in many cases, they choose to go on their own because they don't want to come back, face the accountability and have to admit again that they didn't get the job done. Here's why this is so important. If you can't delegate, then you have an owner-dependent business. And an owner-dependent business is not a sellable business. So I know what you really want is to stop being the chief everything officer. You really want to be able to function like a true CEO. And somewhere down the line, you want to be able to have your business run completely without you. Whether that means you're just taking profits as a shareholder business owner or you're actually preparing to sell. Wherever you're at on that scale, I want to invite you to the Exit School webinar where I will take you through the process for how to make your business truly owner independent so that you can increase the profits, increase the value, and maybe go on vacation without everybody calling you for all the things that they need. For more great videos like this, make sure that you like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. All right, my friend, keep building, keep growing, and let's get you to your 8-figure exit.